Let's get the cameras and let's finish the outro. Boom! Hey everybody, this is Hiko Simon. Welcome to Tokyo Tonight 2. Yes, it's Tokyo Tonight. We've gone back to calling it that lately. Hope you're all very well. Good to see you guys. I was just playing around with Korg a little bit earlier and thought I'd do that as my intro. Good to see you. Hey, ASDF 12131. Big Kurima, good to see you. And good to see you. Let's see who's in the comments just to start off with. I can still see the original comments right there. So hello, Bold Berlitz Boy. As well as Mr. Cordy Chip, as well as Amber. Trammy is heading our way. Indeed, in fact, it's due to actually arrive during the show. I've turned off the aircon and everything so that you can hear that if that happens. Oh, boom. Turn that off. There we go. It is getting a bit windier and the rain is picking up. It is due to pass like close to Tokyo, not directly over Tokyo. So that should be a bit of excitement. Yes, so Ambo, good to see you. Sergeant Bilko Kapow, indeed, good to see you. We've got Nippon Culture Quest. Hey, awesome to see you. Travis Moore, good to see you. Well, I've got Tai Nakamura, good to see you from the start of the show. And we've got Phoenix 787. Hey, indeed. Quinn Rankid, good to see you. Mr. Cordy Chip, I think I've already set up before, but Mr. Cordy Chip, good to see you as always. Michael WB, good to see you. All ears for the quitting your job special portion, indeed. Look out for that because that's been something I've been talking about on Twitter this week. If you want to get a fair idea of the things that I'm going to be talking about during the show, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook. More Twitter really than Facebook, although I'm always trying to think what's interesting to talk about on Facebook. That in itself is another one of the subjects this week, of course, because John Oliver did that thing on Facebook this week, and it's been a topic of conversation. I've had thoughts on it. But yeah, indeed, boom, shaka shaka. Tai Nakamura, glad that you noticed. And good to see everybody. ASDF 1231. I'm trying to find my place again when I scroll down. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. Woohoo, says Sergeant Bilko. We are boom, we are go. Sup indeed, Tai Nakamura. Xpeha, good to see you. Xpeha, good to see you. Natalie Pate, Natalie Pate or Pate, good to see you. I'm here. So, what have I been doing this week? There's a few things. I've got most of it there in the subjects, but first thing actually is I must admit that this week I saw some good things. I saw the end of Westworld 2, which I quite enjoyed. I'd recommend. I'm looking forward to Westworld 3. I saw a couple of things. I'm trying to remember, but the one thing that I saw is The Room, and I guess I'll start with that. It's in here. You've all heard of The Room. Everyone's like seen the viral clips on YouTube and everything of like the rooftop scene. Whereas, no, I did not hit her. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mike. Oh, hi, Mark. Is that Mark? Yeah. And you know, there's a few scenes which are just like, even just taken out, they're just ridiculous, and they kind of become instant classics just for how awkward and terrible they are. And you know, all these things, the worst movie ever made, The Disaster Artist, excellent movie made based upon it. And when Tommy Wiseau apparently did an announcement that he was putting the video on, the whole movie onto YouTube, I went looking for it. I think I found not his movie, I found someone else had illegally uploaded it and it was taken down a few days later, but not before I watched it twice, because I enjoyed it so much. And I don't know, it's like, I need to explain this because I've spent the whole week basically obsessing over this movie and trying to figure out, obsessing over why I'm obsessing over this movie. It is bad, it is really bad, but what's really kind of cool about it is that so here's the thing. For my job, my job is people tell me fact situations, and I need to look at those situations, and I need to disregard everything that's normal and okay and find where the problems are. And this is the whole thing. My whole education, my whole thing is, you know, when I'm testing out my theory, I'll walk over to someone else and I'll say, hey, listen, let me give you a fact and tell me what sounds wrong about it, and I'll tell them the facts and they'll pick out the wrong things. And you know, basically what I do day to day is like a game of trying to see something and trying to disregard all the good bits and catch all the bad bits. And I've thought about it. This is what I love so much about The Room. It's perfectly bad. I mean, it's like there's every single thing. The camera is in and out of focus. You know, the movie's like 30% B-roll. The sex scenes are terrible. The dialogue, it's like, you know how actors, when filming, they'll leave like a pause before before they speak, so that you edit, so that you can create the rhythm in the editing. But in the editing of this movie, they just left all the pauses, so every part of the conversation is stilted. Besides which, of course, the fact that the dialogue is completely unnatural in the first place. I mean, there's the mother who actually verbalizes her stage directions. I'm going to walk over here and sit down, and I'm going to tell you about I mean, it's like the movie start to end is like, and the first time you watch it, like, you don't catch all the bad things. That's the thing. You watch it the second time. I watched it the first time, and I started watching reviews about it, and they pointed out things like the focus, which I didn't notice the first time. And you watch it the second time, and you notice the camera going in and out of focus the whole time. And they point out things like in the background, in the room, in the apartment. Apparently, as props, they bought like photo frames which had pictures of spoons in them that you're supposed to replace with your photos. But apparently, they were making the film in a hurry, and they said, "I just leave the spoons in there." So all the photos in the background are all of spoons. I mean, I find it joyful to find a movie it is fun. It's fun just to spot all the wrongness. So the movie The Room, Tommy Wiseau, it is excellent. In fact, now that it's down from YouTube, I feel like I want to buy the DVD. I see why people watch it over and over. The thing is, I mean, it's a terrible movie. It's a terrible, terrible movie. But I can remember, like, I watched it like even after just once. I could sequentially talk about almost every scene. Every scene in the movie is memorable. Like, not for a good reason, but every single scene is memorable. Again, I guess it depends on what you want. The story itself is there. You can kind of see what the director's trying to do. I mean, that in itself is kind of interesting, trying to analyze that. But the movie is just super interesting. I mean, just like it's captivating. You cannot forget it when you see it. The fact that they take a love scene and they cut and paste parts of it into one later on, you can totally tell. It's really, really good. So I watched The Room, and I don't know, I've heard the stories about people who are like addicted to watching it, and why they have like late night screenings and so on, and people who memorize the dialogue. And yeah, I really get it. Obviously not going to be for everybody, but if you get a chance to watch it, I do recommend watching it. It's just fun. So yes, that was the highlight of my week. So I've got a bunch of topics. There's a lot to talk about today. If there's some spare time, I'll make a track. If not, I'll just go through. But yeah, let's kick into it. So what do we got here? First of all, this I have not seen, but apparently I've heard good things about this, including from other YouTubers. And yeah, so maybe it's worth checking out. This is from apparently the Japanese zombie comedy, and it's one thing Japanese don't really do very well, the zombie movies. One of the Dead is a Shaun of the Dead level brilliant movie apparently. So I don't know, I've got to check this out. Has anyone here seen this? One Cut of the Dead. Has anyone seen this? Well, so here's the thing, Mr. Koriche. Independence Day Resurgence is just a crappy movie made by good movie makers, whereas The Room is really like a school play done by somebody who had no idea what they were doing the entire time, and had no idea how to write script. So it's how do you describe it? The thing is, it's perfectly magically bad the whole way through. That's the thing about it. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like with Independence Day or 50 Shades of Grey, which I could only stand watching for like 30 minutes, you know, it's like it is all in focus. The dialogue is corny, but it's human dialogue, and its rhythm is like a conversation. I mean, it's a crappy conversation with stupid people, but you know, The Room is just like, you have to understand, it's almost like if you created a situation, you were trying to like figure out how to make as many small technical mistakes as possible, and big mistakes, you know, like as a quiz for like movie making school, and you're going to have people try to spot all the mistakes on purpose. That's kind of what it is. So it is on a different level, but it makes it enjoyable that it's on a different level. It's so that's my coming back to that. Has anyone seen this movie? Because like I say, I've seen and heard multiple good things about it. So yes, apparently check it out. One Cut of the Dead is brilliant. Good reminder right now. Just had a bit of a burst of rain banging against the window here. You might have heard it, but yeah, it might pick up soon. It's supposed to pick up actually during this hour. The Typhoon is here, which is a good reminder to check out. Somebody went and put up a list of stuff that you should have ready, basically, for power outages and whatnot in Japan. First, get a good backpack. So yeah, it's a good list from a Japanese person of, expecting for disaster preparedness. And this is true wherever you are in the world, but especially 100% if you're in Japan, you should have a disaster pack, including lots of water for a start. So they recommend a camera bag because it's got lots of separators. There's something to store all your disaster kit in. A pair of shoes and inners, comfy shoes to have, because you never know. Gloves. This is something Japanese make a big deal of, not just the helmets but gloves, because you might have to remove debris. You might be in a situation with being in a damaged building or whatever. So they have that. This is, they talk about a notebook and a pen. It's good to have a notebook. Apparently you might have to write down information and keep it handy. I don't know why that has that particular logo on it, but I guess they think that it's likely to make it more legible. I'm just going to enlarge the preview for this, so sorry while I'm distracted for one moment. I do not need to see that. Boom, boom, boom. How can I enlarge this? I want to enlarge the preview so I can read the comments in front of me better, which I normally do this, but I can't seem to do it right now. Meh. That's alright. It is a bit hot in here with the computer running, so I'm going to turn on the aircon. So what else have we got here? We've got a foldable raincoat, band-aids, towels, all that sort of stuff, wet wipes. These things are really popular. Sort of hand crank LED lights which have radios and chargers inside of them. You can connect these up to your mobile phone to charge them with a hand crank. Radio, a hands-free torch, are highly recommended. This is a plug-in, one of these Anchor portable batteries, but it actually also plugs directly into a power source if you need to charge it up. So good to have lots of those things. A warm suit for keeping warm, assuming again you'll have no power and it might be cold. And a super battery, which will charge lots of things for many, many days. So I think big emphasis on chargeability and so on nowadays, as well as a good stock of water. And non-perishable foods, or basically long-lasting foods, and drinks and so on to store. And you should keep the stuff in your house. Oh yes, and as well as emergency toilets. These things are very, very important. So yeah, the Typhoon was weak in Kansai, it says shoeless floor dweller. Well, apparently it was pretty serious in Wakayama, like the places facing the Pacific coast. But yeah, I could imagine how furthermore on the, hey, that guy Fox, good to see you, and Mogberry Pie, how's it? Good to see you guys. Does anyone remember Monkey in the 80s? That's what drew you to Japanese humor in the first place. I don't know Monkey, actually. I know Gotsue Kanji, Gaki no Tsukai, Downtown. Those were my introduction to Japanese. Oh, you're in Wakayama. Okay, well, I guess it sounds like it was the Typhoon, the Super Typhoon was not so super at all for shoeless floor dweller, but hey, I mean, that's, geez. Were you hoping to need all of the stuff that I'm showing you right now? Which you should have, by the way, regardless. You should have a tent, you should have large Listerine, you should have a helmet, you should have a Swiss Army knife. I mean, this is all stuff which you should probably keep a good stock of. Makita, like batteries and stuff. I mean, this person's obviously very serious about the subject, but it's good to have an emergency pack. So you're getting a bit of wind now in Osaka City, says Nippon Culture Quest. Well, yeah, I think it still isn't really here yet. They are saying that Tokyo is going to get the leading edge, the sort of the eastern edge of the typhoon is where all the wind is. So, particularly Shikoku's caught it pretty badly, as did Kyushu, and probably Shizuoka and Chiba are going to get it. But we'll see how we go here. But yeah. Well, Travis Moore, okay, so I'm glad that you're okay where you are in Osaka there. Yeah, so what else we got here? Oh, big news this week, of course. The Hayabusa 2 probe, I think I mentioned this last week, did actually manage to land 3 robots on the surface of this asteroid. And now they're like bouncing around, shooting videos and stuff. Super cool. The cameras don't look that flash. I mean, I understand they're moving constantly because there's basically almost no gravity. The asteroid is only half a kilometer, 500 meters, 500 yards across. So it's kind of amazing, actually, that anything even sticks to it, given that it's that small. But it does have its own gravity. The probe itself is orbiting around, and these robots are on it. And they're shooting kind of like drunk iPhone photos, and they shot a really terrible movie this week. So that's pretty cool. Um, yeah. So this was interesting. I guess everybody here saw the Facebook, the John Oliver last week tonight takedown of Facebook this week, and if you haven't, you should go check it out. I mean, it's kind of, there's nothing there really new or dramatic or alarming. You know, there's nothing there that no one already sort of doesn't know about Facebook. But they pointed out some of the specific problems about the way that it's being, the way, particularly in Myanmar, how in certain countries where it's become like a de facto method of communication, it's been offered for free by most of the telco companies there, and yet there's no local language moderators or anyone. So basically, you can go on there and you can. Anyway, I mean, I suppose there are people who occasionally message me who say that they wish that there was free speech on Facebook and that there wasn't all of this left-wing censorship. I mean, geez, a person wants to, call for genocide and they get all in trouble and get banned. What is all this liberal, bias and so on Facebook? And if you find that a drag, you should probably learn Myanmarese or Burmese or whatever and go to Myanmar, because you can call for genocide in Myanmar and people will listen and they will do it for you. And that's what happened. And there were no moderators there to stop it. And it was been acknowledged that Facebook was a part of the trigger of the genocide against that. Please excuse my pronunciation. I believe it's pronounced Rohingya. He pronounced it Rohingya with a J, but I read it as Rohingya anyway. But the basically the Muslim sort of stateless. They're not given. Many of them are not given Myanmarese citizenship. They live near Bangladesh, near the border, and they're having their villages burned and being pushed to Bangladesh, or killed in large numbers. And a lot of the rumors about them were being spread by racist, horrible people in Myanmar, and on Facebook. And so he points out that it's become this kind of the mission of Facebook. This idea of connecting everybody was kind of cool, but Kung Fu Hustle I have not seen. I've seen shorts of it and it does look very, very good, so thank you for the recommendation. So there's this idea that Facebook itself does believe in its mission, as you would expect, that its mission to connect people all over the world. And and I remember when Facebook was like brand new, when it first came out, when I first got my invite onto it, and it was kind of magical to find all of my people that I knew from high school. It was basically at that time I was just at a university. And remember, it started among university students. It was this idea of being able to connect people so that you'd have these personal networks of friends that you could reach out to and share hobbies, share work interests or whatever in ways that didn't exist before. And it was mind-blowing at the time. And I think that mission of connecting people that they believe sincerely in and that they rightfully believe in was part of this very optimistic view of what the internet was at that time, which was this idea that it was going to create this wonderful super brain of humanity, where every good idea that I have, I'm going to share with every other person and their good ideas, and we're all going to work together across the world to suddenly accelerate the development of humanity. As we know, of course, what's really happened with the enablement of the internet and communication is, while that has happened to a degree, certainly, the internet's been used for all sorts of positives. Well, what's generally happened with a lot of the communication mediums like Facebook that we all like the most is that they've kind of become, echo chambers or, amplifiers for the very worst instincts of types of communication. The fun of discovering old friends is sort of now more or less gone. It is a good way for keeping in touch. I do enjoy Facebook for that purpose. But I do notice, there was a time in the middle of this week, totally disconnected to the story, where I realized I'd been in 2 or 3 conversations that left me feeling pretty drained. A couple on my Twitter, just with people who were very, very sort of political and like to argue, and I like to argue as well, but when you're dealing with very relentless people with very strong viewpoints, that can kind of get a little bit of a drag. And there was actually on Victor's page on Facebook, he's been posting a lot of people who he's been receiving anti-immigration links lately, and he finds them very interesting, and I kind of couldn't. I took the bait and I commented on them, although I wish I hadn't. And the thing is, he's posted a couple of videos which are basically videos which are against immigration, but they raise arguments that I recognize rhetorically are arguments that people who believe in white supremacy use. Things like, myths about IQ, myths about nationality and IQ equivalence, and kind of false arguments. Just the idea that the purpose of immigration is to end world hunger, which is all false, and then starting this ridiculous argument based on it. and why should we let in primitives to the country, and kind of using, not using directly racist, but clearly dehumanizing language, and it triggered me, right? I mean, I took the bait and I went in and I made fun of them. You know, especially of course when the "we should stop primitives coming into the country" post was riddled with like grammar errors and misspellings, and I was like, yeah, I agree with you. Kick out everybody who has terrible spelling and grammar. I agree. But yeah, the thing is, I must admit, I used to, when I first saw people like this, I figured they must be like bored, you know, kids or robots on the internet. And I'm sure a lot of them are actually robots. I'm sure people will actually figure it, you know, just like to troll, to wind people up, and, you know, to try to catch people like me. But I've become more and more aware that these are often actual people. There's a lot of people who actually believe this stuff, and unfortunately, you know, and they're very aggressive about how they go out and communicate, and they reach out, and it's one thing to find each other and feel empowered to be dickheads by other people like you, but it's another thing when you also will go out and, you know, unfortunately, this is the whole idiocracy thing. I hate to say it, but I'm an optimist about people. I believe that, you know, anyone's capable of being reasonably intelligent, figuring anything out, and understanding a reasonable discussion. But no, there's a lot of idiots out there, and there's a lot of weak-minded people who will read something that to me is transparently stupid and has an agenda, and that to me is easy to see through, and I'll see, oh geez, there's people taking the bait on this. Like, really? Are people actually that stupid? And it turns out quite a few of them are. I mean, we know the result, you know, with our democracy and so on. So from my perspective, yeah, I've had multiple conversations along these lines this week, and I've sort of come to realize this is all kind of good and fun when people are out there just trying to be trolls, or they're just bots or whatever, but I'm increasingly realizing these are real people, and part of me hates the fact that I'm getting triggered, but also part of me hates that I'm starting to realize that these voices are dominating discussion, and, you know, as much as I am for open discussion. I believe even every topic, including Nazism and genocide, I believe should be totally open. I don't think hiding those views is the right way to discredit them. The problem is that when you ban discussion about tenets, about certain concepts that you know, white supremacists use, then people become unaware of them and unable to defend against them. You've got to put them out there, and you've got to treat them seriously, because someone else might treat them seriously, and break it down. So I am a believer in radical free speech, including types of speech that are illegal in many countries. Not because I want to, you know, be an exponent of it myself, because I think you need to confront, you know, you need to actually break it down and take it apart if you want, you know, and treat people like they're intelligent, and you know, treat it seriously. Wind is picking up now. Windows is starting to rattle a little bit. So I don't know, for all of that, even for the bad stuff, I've always been, you know, so I did a politics major at university. I've been for this, but I must admit, it wears you down. I mean, it really does. And I've lost some of my faith in humanity, I think, as a result of what I've seen over on Facebook myself. I'm not sure we'll get rid of it. I don't want to get rid of it, because I do enjoy the communications I have with you guys. But it can be pretty disheartening, I must admit. You know, they raise a good point. I mean, I guess it's this whole thing about the internet itself, and what we all thought it was going to be and what it is. So yeah, looking at the comments, by the way, Quint Rankid, anti-immigration links for the US or Japan? For the US. This is all American stuff. American people debating. John Anderson, good to see you. Nice to catch the show live for a change. Indeed, good to have you here. And hi, Andrew Moboy, good to have you. And I know it's late for you, so we'll keep going through. That is a drunk Japanese robot asteroid photo, which I think is awesome. That is Facebook as a toilet. And by the way, this is true. Calling it a toilet is unfair, because toilets are awesome. I mean, seriously, especially in Japan, and they take away crap. So yes, indeed, you shouldn't call someone a toilet to make fun of it. The Room, I watched The Room for the people who have just arrived here. I did a big conversation at the start of this as to I've watched it twice, and I love The Room. I love it. Yes, I could talk about. I would love. Please go out and watch it sometime. And when you do, and we meet and we have a beer, I want to talk about every single scene, because every single scene is awesome, because there's just these little things and big things, but little things and big things in every scene that are just wrong with it. It's extremely enjoyable. Amber, you're having trouble with wind at the moment. Thank you, Amber. TMI. This guy. This is just another thing that I stumbled on the recommendations. I mean, you should use my channel to avoid recommendations, that you can just watch the stuff that you want to watch, but at the same time, sometimes going into YouTube can be fun and you get interesting recommendations. And the algorithm got me, that recommended this guy. What's his name again? He's movie accent expert, and he basically goes through movies looking at actors who have been trained to do certain accents, and he's an expert at breaking down how accents are physiologically done and how to train actors, I suppose, in how to perform them. And he goes around basically like, a lot of famous movies and not so famous movies. He's got a good humor about it. Some of them he just says, what the hell is this? And others he actually goes into where they almost got it, and the bits that they could have done differently, or when it's good, why it's good, and what the differences are. Right down to like how Russians pronounce, their R's and their nyets and all that sort of stuff, and when to do it and when not to do it. He really, really nailed. I mean, it's his job, I understand it, but he showed a couple of examples of good and bad Australian accents being done in movies, including a New Zealand accent he did in one. And he actually pointed out it was being done badly, and he actually explained really well the difference between a New Zealand and Australian accent. Which I thought was brilliant. Well, Typhoon, I can hear rain starting to bang on the window, so it's starting. So, but the point is, this is really, really good, because when you speak Japanese, for example, a language which is very different to English, like very physically in your mouth, it's very different. Well, there's two things that you realize about it. One, it's a physiologically different thing. He makes a really good point, by the way, about the American accent. I know Americans say, we don't have an accent. You all have the accent. Yeah, you have an accent too. And he points out there's one thing about the American accent that's really hard for us, that really sets the American accent apart from almost every other accent. There's almost no other accent that pronounces R's the way that Americans pronounce R's. And he points out himself, it's actually really hard to do. And a lot of kids in America struggle to pronounce the American R. He showed examples of it, and it's really, really interesting the way that you curl your R, your tongue all the way back in your mouth when you say R, and you always say it like we just like extend the vowel, and you guys like actually like go into R. So this is a leather fur. You'll actually go all the way back. And he actually shows how you do that thing in your mouth for it physiologically. And he talks about Japanese. He talks about the vowel sounds and everything. And again, if you want to learn, I think they should teach this stuff in school, because my story is when I was a baby in New Zealand, then I moved to Australia. I grew up speaking probably like my mum, who's Australian, and the other kids who are Australian. Then I moved back to New Zealand, where everyone speaks a bit differently, like Canada and America. And then I started speaking like a Kiwi. Then I went to Singapore. And then I moved back to Australia again, where my accent was different. And then after a year in Australia, I was speaking like an Australian. Then I went to New Zealand, where I not only had New Zealand accents, but New Zealand Maori accents, which are not totally different, but they're different again where I was living. And I was always jumping around, which made me always sort of like look at this stuff really closely, which I think, and I was a TV addict, so I liked imitating characters on TV, and I think that's something that really helped me with my Japanese, because it meant that you'd always, you could appreciate the differences, you could hear them and replicate them really well. The best demonstration of the difference between English and Japanese that I've ever seen is with this. I think I might have done this on the show before, but I'll do it again just because it's really fun. Here's the thing. English is spoken in the front of your mouth. The result of that is that it means that our tongue is always really close to the front of our mouth, and we use the muscles around our mouth a lot when we speak in English to make the sounds that we make. Japanese, by contrast, speak more in the back of their throat. It's mostly vowels and really simple consonants, and they don't actually have to use their mouth or their face very much to make the sounds of Japanese. So this is when foreigners speak weird Japanese, or when Japanese do impressions of like Americans or New Zealanders saying Japanese badly. For them, everything that we do always sounds super exaggerated. It's like we're putting too much muscle in and we're trying to do too much, like to the language, when it's actually very simple and plain. And it's also in the faces. You'll notice this when you spend a lifetime speaking with an American accent. Even if you're Japanese, your face will develop all these little muscles. You'll develop all this control in your face. The Japanese don't have these muscles because they just don't speak they don't use that part of their face. And it actually means that you'll have people who are 100% Japanese, but Nikkei Americans have different faces, and you can kind of tell even just looking at their faces. I mean, again, I used to work in a souvenir shop, and you can tell the difference between a Nikkei Japanese and American and Japanese just because of it's just from a lifetime of speaking a different accent. It changes your face. The best example is this: if I bite down on this pen and talk, you won't be able to hear very much of what I say because English requires the front of the mouth. This blocks the front of the mouth, and it makes it almost impossible. So if I write down this, there's nothing that I can say. I can use the vowels. You can try to understand, right? So hard to really understand anything. But if I put this on, I say the same thing in Japanese. これで日本語しゃべろうとしたらほとんど全ての音ができるから、全然問題なくこれ関連点わかるけど、in English you can't really understand anything. You can't understand anything in English, but in Japanese, it doesn't actually obstruct very much at all. And so that's a really cool thing about linguistics and accents. And this guy really explains that sort of thing a lot. So it's really, really cool. It's a really interesting series, and you should watch it, because especially if you're interested in speaking Japanese. And I don't know, with Quint, I don't know why Victor got the links, and I don't know why he was posting them. Victor himself said he found them interesting, which I'm like, yeah, are you serious? Like, are you doing this for clicks? I didn't know. But yes, thank you. Dave O'Hunter, I guess that would be the thumbnail. But this is some serious shit. I mean, seriously, if you want to speak good Japanese, if you are having trouble, in fact, it's probably a good way to practice Japanese with a pen in your mouth, because if you are finding that inhibitive, it means that you're pronouncing it wrong. Whereas if you are able to say it, it means you've got it right. You just basically have to have a flat face. So that's super interesting. This is good news if you're in Japan and you're a new university graduate and you're looking for a job. Salaries that are an all-time high, as they should be. The downside of this, of course, is that people don't want to do low-wage jobs like working in convenience stores and so on, which means that right now delivery services, convenience stores, they're all having trouble hiring people, but it's great for universities, as it should be. There's a shortage of workers and they are getting paid more. Here's another moment I had this week where I was just a little bit disappointed in the universe, I'll admit to this. Everyone knows about Tokyo Medical University, the scandal that happened earlier this year, where it turned out that after multiple cases where the Tokyo Medical University Hospital had multiple women leave after becoming doctors because they were leaving for maternity or getting married, and basically it meant that where they had planned doctor rosters and suddenly multiple women doctors went on leave, all of the work, which was distributed among like 20 doctors, for example, when 5 go on maternity leave at once, that work is spread among 15, and the other doctors were finding it such a burden that they were saying, we have to do something to manage the number of female doctors, because they suddenly need to go out. In Japan you get at least 12 months maternity leave, and often you don't come back from it. So they said, listen, this is they're leaving us in the lurch and it's crushing us with work, so we need to make sure that we maintain a male to female doctor ratio that suppresses the number of women doctors. Because it's getting too tough on all the doctors, men and women, that are left behind at work. This was the rationale for it. Again, rather than trying to make it easy for women with kids to work or to come back to work, the solution that the university came up with, you'll recall, was to try to suppress the number of women getting into the medical school to begin with, by basically setting a different bar for women, making it harder for them to get in, to try to filter down the numbers, i.e. it was like reverse affirmative action. They were actually penalizing women. It raised the status of the women, I guess, who got in. Apparently this came through, that they were kind of proud that they got through in spite of trying to, the discrimination in the scores against them. However, when this came out, that the university was actually manipulating the entrance exam scores to try to penalize women and make it easier for stupid men who don't deserve to get in instead, it caused a bit of a backlash, particularly from the women, obviously, who would have gotten in but were denied that just because the university wanted to manage a quota for the hospital attached to the university. So the result. Uh, I'll come back to your question in a moment, Amber, by the way. So, yeah, basically, huge scandal has caused a lot of angst, drop in reputation for the university. Now they're looking at paying compensation to the people who have failed when they didn't fail, which this has been going back decades now, apparently. And they've just approved their first woman president. And when I posted this, I just posted the link. I didn't post it with a comment or anything like that. I just put the story with the name of the title and the link. I had like 3 or 4 people message me back and said, oh geez, I hope this isn't just a token move of just putting any woman in just because, you know, they got in trouble for the sexism scandal. And multiple people said, I hope this isn't just tokenism. The problem here is that the leadership of the university, one, made this terrible decision in the first place because they had no perspective at all that what they were doing was wrong, and two, they completely handled the scandal when it came out, rather than saying, oh, we did the wrong thing, and we recognize that we could have handled it better, and we're going to look at ways that we can try to improve things and do things better. Instead, they said, we didn't have any choice. You know, the broads are always, you know, walking out on us, so, you know, it's the only reasonable thing that we could do. We didn't have any choice, is what they said. They actually went on and gave like a Mad Men, a 1950s you know, Mad Men type response, thinking that was totally okay, which of course made everything worse, destroyed the reputation of the university. So the fact is, the biggest problems that the university has right now, the leadership are completely incompetent and incapable of dealing with. And in that respect, you could say that the male leadership are the token. I mean, they're the ones who got the easy ride in to the university and are completely screwing it up. So yeah, they've hired someone who's qualified to deal with the problems that they have, who, not surprisingly, is a woman, because frankly the men have been screwing it up by being sexist. I mean, they could have got a non-sexist man to do it, but sure, you know, they found someone who's qualified, and she's the president. How you can even question that being tokenism, to me, just again shows that, you know, stupid people are stupid people, I guess, and unfortunately there are more of them than I care to admit. So yeah, bold bullets, boy. House, wind is strong, house is vibrating. I'm in a big building, so I'm probably not going to get that, although the windows might shake. I had a couple of gusts just now, but nothing too serious. Amber, you ask, do Japanese understand the difference between English, and American English? And yes, kind of. Well, I wouldn't say they all necessarily do, but I think that they do understand that they do sound different, even if they can't explain how they sound different. There is an idea that, you know, English is like the, oh, here it comes. Don't know if you can hear that, but that's quite loud. Yeah, they have this idea that English is the more elegant, the Kyoto, you know, Japanese type thing. It is a lot like Kyoto and standardized Tokyo-based English, where even Japanese, a lot of Japanese will think nicely spoken Kyoto accent, you know, does sound very nice, and you know, it's kind of an old-fashioned, but kind of a, you know, superior version of Japanese, which certainly people from Kyoto think. Whereas Tokyo is kind of standardized Japanese, which a lot of people from other parts of the world, you know, parts of Japan, resent being told that that's standard. And certainly any New Zealander or Australian or British person hates being told that American English is standard English. But I've been here 20 years, and it only took me like 2 years to come to the conclusion that, yeah, American English is standard English. I mean, how are we going to fight that? They make all the movies, they've got all the money. Japanese are not learning English to visit New Zealand. I mean, like 3 or 4 of them are, but the other 120 million are learning to go to America and go to Disneyland or whatever. And, you know, we have America to thank for the fact that they want to learn English. So they understand that, yes, American English is standard English. Sometimes I've heard of cases where they had an English teacher and they felt deceived when they learned that when they found out that they'd been learning English with a non-American accent and that they had to readjust it. That happens. So yeah. Quid Ranked, you think the question about tokenism is a good one in some walks? Being president is a position of power, but a front. Well, certainly, maybe I'm overstating it, but the point is that the university has specific issues that it's trying to address, which are relating to its own terrible record of sexism. And so, you know, just putting someone in a skirt, you know, and giving them the title of president, perhaps that is what they were doing. If that is what they were doing, then I would say they're going to get into even more trouble. But to me, it sounds like they've finally done one thing mildly correct by recognizing that they have a problem in this area and they actually need an informed opinion to run it. And aluminium, you weird people. Yes, indeed, Dave Hunter. Aluminium. We make aluminium in New Zealand as well. But yes. So with this case, I suppose there are certainly no doubt there are cases, you know, where something like that would happen, but in this specific case, I mean, this is a case of a university being so wrong the other way that, yeah. Sergeant Bilko is asking, do Japanese people understand the difference between American English and Scottish English, or Canadian or Liverpool English? Good question. I mean, again, I mean, how well do you know, Swedish people understand the difference between Tohoku English and Osaka English? Tohoku Japanese and Osaka Japanese. To me, Liverpudlian is basically like Okinawan. I've been down there and I couldn't even find, at least if you go to like Kyushu or Kansai, the first half of most Japanese words, the roots of the words, the stems, are basically the same. They just change with the grammar. They will change a lot of words. The more you get into the grammar, the words will be totally different, but there's basically sufficient recognizability to navigate the accents, which I think you get in most parts of Scotland as well. You just have to sort of adjust a little bit. But then you get like into Welsh and Liverpudlian, and Liverpudlian I know it's supposed to be English, but honestly I can't make out anything from it. And that's how I was in Okinawa when I was in a remote part of Okinawa and was hearing people speaking proper Okinawan. There's very little that's recognizable from a Japanese perspective in the language left. So yeah, I don't know. English, what's English? Well, I think that the reference there was to Queen's English, which is something. There are Queen's English schools here. There's the Shane English School, which has a big British flag on it, and they use South African, New Zealand, Australian, and British teachers. But yeah, you know, as Flight of the Conchords would say, slightly more correctly, but yes. So anyway, other stories that we have, a majority of companies claim a shortage of full-time employees. This is what I'm talking about. There's the worsening employment shortage in Japan, which is resulting, as we saw just before, in improved postgraduate salaries for people, but at the same time, the problem here is broadening. Suga Kanbo Chokan, the cabinet secretary of the LDP, has announced that they are going to now aggressively, at the same time as they're about to legalize a casino and legalize gambling in Japan, under strict licensing requirements, they are going to tackle the issue of pachinko. I've talked about pachinko before and why it's a bit weird that it's legal. Technically in Japan, gambling is illegal, but of course you can, well, except for licensed gambling, which is boat racing, bicycle racing, horse racing, there are specific things that are allowed, but pachinko technically is not really allowed. People pay money for pachinko, and if they win, they get prizes. They get like a token prize, like a plastic trophy or something, that they then take out of the shop. They walk up the road and they exchange the plastic token for money. So basically they do win money, and there are people who spend their whole lives playing pachinko who actually do it as a career. They call this the 3-point structure, basically, which is that so long as the TUC shop, the tuck shop where they exchange the prize, isn't actually directly owned by the same company that owns the pachinko parlor, then technically it's not gambling, or the police will look the other way. However, try setting up a casino set up with the same model. Everyone will get arrested. So basically, it's something that the police have always looked the other way at in Japan for various reasons. Probably the biggest reason is actually, people might be surprised to hear this, but the reason that pachinko is kind of everyone's looked the other way at it is, frankly, this was like one of the few industries that Zainichi Koreans who were left in Japan after World War II, who stayed or were stranded in Japan after World War II, they built up. They basically set up all of these places themselves, and they used a lot of the money from it to help boost their community, which suffered discrimination, of course, after World War II, and to pay, of course, for politicians to not regulate them. So it was spent basically on helping the community in bribes, more or less. And as a result, pachinko's been actually the backbone of the Korean community in Japan. It's done a lot for the North Korean and South Korean communities in Japan since World War II. And although attempts to regulate it, I mean, people have recognized this is patently not, this does not fit with the law. And every time someone said that they're going to do it, those politicians will get torn down as, oh, you just want to do it because you're racist. Or actual people who are supporters of Koreans in Japan, which actually include people in the right-wing parties, famously the Secretary General of the LDP for many years, Nonaka. He was a big advocate for Korean rights in Japan, and he blocked attempts to regulate pachinko. So this has kind of been a thing going on for a long time, but people pointed out when North Korea started abducting Japanese people and firing rockets over the country, people were pointing out Japanese gamblers are paying for the rockets that are being fired over Japan. That money from those pachinko parlors or from the North Korean owned ones was being sent to North Korea. Of course, that money funneling is being banned now. The other thing is that now, Koreans have been in Japan for like 70 years since the end of World War II. A lot of them are naturalizing and becoming Japanese and getting jobs. They're no longer trapped where they, they have better career choices now. Then, geez, no one can really tell that they're Korean most of the time anyway. They become Japanese, they take Japanese names. So they're getting more integrated in society, and the need for pachinko as like a kind of social welfare for these people is kind of gone. So there is that, but at the same time, Abe is also famously a nationalist, so there is a bit of a concern about sinister motives, but from my perspective, the other thing about pachinko parlors is you've got a lot of gambling addicted people. Japan has millions of gambling addicts in a country where gambling is illegal. So, I'm personally, and these are kind of places of misery. Every year there are stories of kids who die in cars in parking lots with parents gambling inside at pachinko. So I'm kind of glad to see them get rid of it myself. I'd be happy to see it get regulated, or at least make them require them to have licenses, control the numbers, take the money and the profits, and make them fund gambling addiction treatment, stuff like that. You put it to some good. It served a certain purpose, and they've had a pretty good run. But I'm glad if they make it illegal myself. Even understanding that, nothing at all against Korean Japanese. I'm cool and supportive of Korean Japanese rights, but not to the point of allowing this to continue. So Mitsubishi Denki, appliance maker. They don't really sell appliances very much outside of Japan. Even in Japan, frankly, they're a second or third rate. I mean, they make air conditioners, they make sort of regular home appliances and so on. They're not that successful. They've been struggling a lot lately, and it turns out they've been also working their employees to death. They classified all of their employees under a special category, discretionary working system, where they are basically allowed to, they'll guarantee them a fixed salary in exchange for which they don't have to pay them overtime, in exchange for which they work them to death. And there are 3 or 4 people in the last year apparently who have worked and committed suicide. This has come out in a raid from the Labour Standards Bureau, which has caused them to abolish the system, to say that they're sorry. But again, people keep working to death, and this comes into the story that I want to talk about before we finish the show, which is on quitting jobs in Japan, which I know some people are looking out for. But yes, Mr. Koriche, we may have drug addicts even though drugs are illegal. Well, indeed. Well, this is the whole point, though. So, for example, I'm okay. I'm not like for outright banning gambling. I'm okay with gambling, but I think you can't have it going completely out of control, just the same as I'm okay with liberalization of drugs, for example. But I think you shouldn't just blindly and completely go anarchy on the whole thing. I think being able to regulate and tax soft drugs like marijuana, I can see as being net beneficial, and I'd support it, even if I'm not that keen on doing it myself. I can see that. But allowing unregulated sales of crack cocaine on every street corner, you might want to think that one through. And that's what pachinko is. Pachinko is basically unregulated crack. And yes, regulating it in some ways allows people to have clean needles and whatever, just with drugs as well. But you have to consider, if you get the balance wrong, you're going to have the current estimate in Japan is that there are 4 million gambling addicts, and you have it in spite of it being illegal. Well, in spite of it being basically de facto legal. You can control it better. Through a proper degree of management. There's no attempt to manage it at the moment. Like I said, I think don't treat people like they're kids. I think you can allow people to have access to certain amounts of stuff. Just give them the support. Make sure that there's a safety net associated with it, which there isn't in Japan. That's the problem with it. Coming back, the government, same guy who's banning pachinko there, is actually about to pass a law to allow a dramatic broadening of categories of work visa for foreigners, because he's being told by business, we need more foreign workers, we need to be able to sponsor visas for people. This is frankly particularly in the low wage industries, delivery, construction, convenience stores. They're all saying, please let us hire more foreigners because you're cracking down on students working in convenience stores. But we need them. We can't hire enough Japanese university students. They're getting more money. They won't take our wages, and we're having to close down businesses because we can't fill them with people. So they're lobbying the government to allow more foreigners in, and the Abe government is about to pass a huge package of laws which is going to make it much easier. If you want to come work in Japan, the opportunities to come and work in more than just teaching English are about to really explode open, and they're pushing that as a government policy. So unlike other countries, you know, where Victor's, I said earlier, is putting up links all the time, anti-immigration sort of links, and a lot of anti-immigration people say we should look at Japan, we should be like Japan. Japan is homogenous, one race, closed. Isn't that the way we should be, all bumping with our cousins or something? I don't know what they want, but you know, that's completely, the ideas that these people have about Japan are often wrong, and right now Japan is aggressively trying to introduce as many Muslims as possible. Just by the way, Japan has language schools and nursing schools in Indonesia. They're trying to get as many Indonesian Muslim nurses, and in order to welcome them coming into Japan, they're building mosques, they're training hospitals on allowing prayer time and prayer rooms, halal food. I mean, the government's being super aggressive about accommodating a huge influx of Muslims into Japan, specifically from Indonesia, but also looking at Vietnam and also looking at Philippines, where they're both Muslims and Catholics. So, you know, Japan isn't quite the white supremacist wet dream that I know they often think it is, but and they're working very hard to actually make it. Mr. Kodichev, the problem is that you went away. See, that's what happens. So yeah. Anyway, Japan is aggressively doing that, which means yay, party time. Come and be in Japan. This is the whole cool thing about it. That movie is awesome. Here is what I wanted to talk about. We've got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to talk fast as I always do. Japanese boss company will tell your boss that you're quitting for you, sees a high demand for its services. There's this funny thing in Japan. So under lifetime employment, there was a thing where basically people would never quit companies, and it really goes back. Like, where do I even start with this? A lot of Japanese people, when I posted this on Twitter, a lot of people came back and messaged me. Japanese people messaged me. They don't even realize. Nobody's taught about labor law in school. Japan has some of the most generous, most actual worker-friendly labor laws in the entire world. I used to joke that you would need to burn down the building before you could ever get fired legally in Japan. They can't fire you for anything in Japan, or at least under the old labor system, they couldn't fire you for anything. And when I was talking to a friend of mine who's a lawyer in this area, and I was saying, you know, isn't it crazy how, you know, you can't get fired unless you do something like actually burn down the building where you work. And the guy said to me, actually, you know, I know a case where a guy actually burned down and was actually convicted criminally of arson, and yet when he was fired for it, he still won the labor claim. You could even burn down the building and still not get legally fired, or at least the company will owe you compensation for immediate termination. So this is how much Japan has protected workers, and yet in spite of this great sort of protection, so this is protection of this idea of social stability based on having one job for the rest of your life. At the same time, the idea that, so just the whole culture of changing jobs. People who changed jobs were like Ronin, they were like masterless samurai. They were kind of like, something must be really wrong with you if you're changing jobs, or something terrible must have happened in the company. So the idea of changing, you know, that hire new graduates, the idea of hiring experienced hires was one thing that was always a little bit odd, and they're getting used to it now. But the other thing is that people have no idea about the procedures and the policies about it. You grew up in any Western country, you know, everyone knows that every job is basically, you know, how much notice you need to give under law, how much they have to pay you back, you know, what your final paycheck should be or whatever. It's all set on the policies. Everyone knows relatively well enough to go look it up. Most of you guys listening to this in English probably don't need to be told that, you know, quitting your job is about giving notice and telling them when you're leaving in compliance with the rules of the company. It's not something that requires the permission of the company to do. Yet, most Japanese people, by the way, in Japan, divorce, for example, as well, generally requires mutual consent. So people think of quitting their job a bit like divorce, and they believe it requires the mutual consent and agreement of their bosses to quit. And actually, a lot of bosses also believe that it requires their consent and permission to allow an employee to leave. And that when you give notice, when someone gives notice, that they're not giving notice, that they're requesting permission. I had this happen in one of my jobs in Japan, where I got a job and I knew that the company rules said that I had to give 30 days notice if I wanted to quit. I looked at the rules and I thought, well, I want to leave on good terms. I want to transition. I want to manage everything really well. So I'm going to give 3 months notice. And I asked for 3 months at the next place. And then I went and gave notice to my boss. And my boss said, well, we're far too busy. I couldn't think of, at least for 6 more months, giving my consent for this. So no, you can't do that. And I was like, that's funny because I'm not asking. I'm telling you my consent. He's no, I will not allow it. I don't have time to talk about this now. And he walked away. And I'd given my notice. And he had said he didn't accept it. And this happens a lot in Japanese companies. I think my boss actually sincerely believed that he had to give his consent. and that he was not giving it. And for me, it's like you're talking Martian to me. I just told you I'm leaving. That's it. That's my notice. That's official. And I'm trained in this shit, seriously, like really. So I went and talked with HR, and I said, listen, I just gave my notice to my boss, and I'm giving it to you. I'm quitting on this date. I'm going to start making transition plans. And basically I started basically preparing for transition, including letting people know that I was going to be leaving. And when my boss found out that I was doing this, he called me into an office and he said, who have you told? I said, well, I told HR. I've told a couple of people. He said, how dare you? He hit the table. And I said, what do you want me to do? I'm very appreciative of all the support here. I want to further myself. I've got all these sort of reasons. I really appreciate all the coaching and time that you've spent. But I've made this off. I'm taking this job. And this was from a very old-fashioned company, very Japanese company. But it was something where I was okay in the situation because I knew how this stuff works, and I said, this is my notice. I don't want to be a dick about it, but please, let me do this on good terms, with someone who had no concept of the idea of quitting. This was a company where very few people ever quit, and I was quitting in part because of some things that this manager had said earlier on when I'd asked for a transfer within the company, and he said no. I looked outside of the company and I found the transfer that I was looking for outside, and I brought that up when he was being difficult about it in this conversation. But again, when these companies say that they reject it, a lot of people who have no idea where they stand on this believe it. And that's why services like this exist, that they'll pay people to come and tell their company that they're quitting, or they'll just ghost their companies. They won't even show up anymore. It's just based on both employers and employees in Japan not knowing this very basic thing, that quitting a company is just a matter of giving notice. So bear in mind, in Japan, by law, the notice period is 30 days. It can be adjusted in your contract, so always check your contract or check the company rules. If you want to quit your company, check what the notice periods are. The very longest ones are 90 days. Generally it's 30 days. Check your contract. But typically even the rules will be 30 days. They'll be the same as the law. Which is to say, the law applies if your contract is not explicit. If your contract says something explicit, then you agree to that, which could be longer than the law. Typically, to leave on good terms, you should, in Japan, take 3 months. We'll give 3 months notice. Make yourself available. Sometimes they'll say, just take the money away. Just take the taishokin and go. But the taishokin is your quitting money. So I see that does everybody and everyone. Does the vid seem grainy versus previous vids? The J-vlog. Does this vid look grainy? I do see a notice here that the video settings are not good. So I don't know. Maybe this video does look grainy. I'm not sure. But I hope that's not the case. The J-vlog. Good to see you, by the way. I see the video is playing there. That's probably going to interfere with my bandwidth. I didn't realize that. Let me bring back the comments. But no resolution probs. Okay, well, that's good to see. Black Company, Lauren Sakai, good to see you. By the way, I see, Lauren, that you are in Japan. I hope you're having a good time. Enjoy your trip. But yes, awesome to see that, and good to see you watching the show. Was it a black company? No, my first company was a bit blackish. It certainly would be by standards now. At the time, the standards were not totally clear, and it took full advantage of those. But yeah. Amber, do they still use banishment rooms? Well, there are not banishment rooms for a start. No one has rooms in Japan. There are banishment jobs and banishment seats. The old window seat, the old corner seat, is something that happens. And this is the thing. The worst punishment that you'll suffer is you'll get quite a good, well-paid middle management job put somewhere. And I've seen those people. Yeah, they won't fire them. They'll try to put them somewhere where they'll break the fewest things, and they still break things. In the cases that I've seen that they exist, although very, very much in Typhoon is like seriously here now. I wonder if you can hear that. I'm tempted to move the mic over here. Let me see if you can hear. This might make a bit of noise. Okay. Does that work? I think it does. That's the mic. Oh man. Okay. I'm back. Slobs. I can do this now. I can do this. So anyway, that's the thing about Boom. Yes. Oh, technical issues, they never stop. So anyway, remember, you can quit in Japan just by giving notice, just like everywhere else. Tell your friends, because chances are your Japanese friends don't know. It's one of the funny things about working here. Dokdo Takeshima, the Lion Court rocks, the stupid little uninhabited rocks that Korea really wants everyone to know belong to it. It basically, Japan took them in 1904. They didn't really take them, it just claimed them. No one was actually living on them, and they actually declared them under maritime law. At the time, Korea claimed, didn't really have a functional government, didn't have the chance to really oppose it. Japan annexed Korea in 1910. Koreans see the annexation of Korea in 1910 as being a continuation, as having started with the annexation of the Takeshima Islands. Japan says that totally separate, and Takeshima was more like the integration of Okinawa. It was just putting Japanese islands on a map. Both sides claim through history that they own these islands. However, when Korea was liberated at the end of World War II in 1945, they claimed that these two islands belonged to it as well, and it wanted those islands back. The Americans said, no, we're going to leave it with Japan, but we're going to use it for a bombing range. The Americans kept using it as a bombing range. The Koreans wanted to claim it so badly that they put people on the islands while it was being bombed by the Americans, and those people were killed by the Americans. The Americans were sort of like, oh, well, not your islands. However, when the Korean Coast Guard in 1953 went and marched onto the islands and said, these are ours now, which was just while Japan, just at the end of the occupation, where Japan was no longer under, like a couple of months out of America, no longer being under direct American rule. I guess they didn't want to start a fight with America, so South Korea took it the moment that it went back to normal Japanese rule. But of course, Japan had no Coast Guard or Air Sea or Defense Forces at that time. They were just in the process of forming the Self-Defense Forces, so good opportunity for them in 1953 to take the islands back. They fortified the islands. They put concrete and typhoony. They put concrete and gun emplacements and platoons and everything on the islands, and they tell everybody now that they're ours and come get them, Japan. And they still practice every year military exercises anticipating Japan coming and having a fight for them to take the islands back. And seriously, no one in Japan gives a crap. Really, really, no one cares. And people bring it up because there are Finnish fishermen from Shimane Prefecture who have tried to go fishing near the islands, and when they have, the Koreans have shot them and killed them, and they're a little bit upset about that. But apart from that, I mean, even the biggest nationalists in Japan, Shintaro Ishihara, on the subject, I remember watching an interview. He was like, "Yeah, no one thinks they're going to come back. In fact, the Koreans have shown us what to do. If we have islands that are disputed, we should just do what they did, because we know that they're not coming back." And that's the reason that Ishihara wanted to buy the Senkaku Islands that China claims, and he said he wanted to do what the Koreans did with Takeshima or Dokdo, according to them. And it's a good story there in The Economist explaining the whole thing. Mario Kart is gone now. In terms of Nintendo won a lawsuit against them for using the Mario image and the costumes and everything, basically taking the Nintendo-owned intellectual property to try to market a product which was not done with permission, a bit kind of scraggy and not safe, and caused a number of traffic accidents and injuries, which was bad for the image of the brand. And they said, you have to stop, and they won permission on that. Bit of a shame. I wanted to do that. It's still, the Mario Kart still exists. I guess they're going to change the names of them or whatever. It's something I'd still like to do when I have some friends come over to Tokyo. But the dressing up as Mario and going around on the carts is unfortunately no longer going to be permitted. Pantene. So this is something that happened after I came to Japan. When I came to Japan at university graduate hiring, there was a kind of a shushoku suit for guys. Guys would typically, do their hair black, and although not strictly, there was some brown haired, there were some dyed haired people, in my group when I joined with 100 Japanese university grads in my first job. But the thing was, guys would be in fairly conservative suits, true, but women were pretty much could dress anything that they liked, and they would wear floral dresses, they would do whatever. And somewhere along the line in the early 2000s, it became this thing that there was like this a female version of the job hunting suit that men had, and this idea that they would dye their hair black while they're looking for a job, and they'd all ponytail their hair back, and they'd look exactly the same. So now Pantene, of course, because they want to sell hair dye, and this is a problem for them, I suppose, are asking, hey, why does everybody looking for a job have to do this? And indeed, again, there's a shortage of jobs. So seriously, paint your hair purple, go nuts, if you ask me. But yes, it's kind of funny. This is not traditional Japanese culture. This is like post-millennium culture in Japan. And it comes with this idea, basically, dress in a mankini. That's one approach, perhaps. But yeah, the idea is, it's funny, Japanese basically look at job hunting, rather than being trying to stand out from the crowd and be that one that gets selected and hired, they look at it more as being like a herd of antelope, and not wanting to be, and job hunting is a process of elimination, not wanting to be one of the people that get picked out rather than the person that gets picked. I guess they see job hunters as lions, and they're just trying to blend in. It's like they're like a herd of zebras, and they just want to appear. Go bold, indeed. Works for me. So yeah, they just don't want to get picked out as for the wrong reason. They're afraid of being eliminated for the fact that they don't have the same color here, which is just stupid, and again shows that there are things particularly in the job hunting aspects of the culture that need to be still addressed. This right now, the sounds that you can hear of that's a big MFing typhoon. It's not quite as big now that it's gotten to Japan. It's starting to peter out, but it still is forecast that it could be up to 60 meter per second, which I believe is like 200 kilometer per hour winds tonight. So it should be interesting. Tokyo gets these a few times a year. This is the 24th typhoon this year. I think about the 4th or 5th that's coming to Tokyo. And it looks like there's another one coming now, so it's sign of the times, but what can we say? This, if you guys played Metal Gear Solid, wow, this show's gone way over time. They've set up a real life version of it at Tokyo Mystery something or other. Basically, you can play Metal Gear Solid for real. An infiltration game where they'll actually set up a whole thing where you can actually practice trying to infiltrate a building like in a spy movie, and apparently it's cool, and I really want to try it, so that's kind of cool. Mario Kart's gone. There's the asteroid rovers. Facebook 50 million accounts breached. You've probably had your passwords reset. I've had it reset. I mean, I assume my data's already been, if not hacked, it's been willingly given by Facebook to a bunch of unconscionable people anyway. But yes, good to know it's also been taken by criminals, who at least didn't pay for it. Yes, they are disguised, and in fact, you can be cardboard boxes. You can get into cardboard boxes in the game. They actually mentioned that. in Metal Gear Solid. I've never played Metal Gear myself, but they describe that as being part of the thing, Sergeant Booker. So it looks like it's pretty cool. And that's got to be the end of the show. Apparently foreigners are getting teased and bullied by dickheads in working in convenience stores. Oh man, Yoshizawa Hitomi, the idol who ran over somebody, was caught on a drive camcorder, drive recorder, saying "oh yabai" when she ran the person over and sped away, leaving the scene of the crime, which was part of what convicted her. That's kind of funny. Yabai basically being like, oh shit. And she was basically has to pay. She avoids jail time, but has to pay $600,000 to the victim, which I know doesn't sound like a lot globally, but I was expecting the comments on the Nichan thread of that to be, oh, so she just paid a bunch of money and got away with it. But no, actually most of the comments on the Nichan thread said that if they got paid, she agreed a settlement of $600,000. They're like, wow, that's great. They'll be feeling like they'll be doing a guts pose. Geez. For that much, I'd want to be run over. I mean, it's pretty much what they're getting ideas of new career ideas. And tonight, all the trains, if you're watching this and you're not at home right now, bad news is that there is no train home because the train stopped in Tokyo around 8 o'clock. Sorry about that. Final thing. Oh, two final things. Damn it. Two final things. One, this guy, Mark something. This guy, he makes awesome videos. He's popped up in my threads this week. He's an American guy, but he's got like a French name, and he has like a loop machine, like a Boss RC505, and a bunch of synthesizers and so on. And he's very good at singing, and he makes like club music on the fly live as a performance, and it's really, really good. It's what I wish I could do at the end of the show. He is awesome. Check it out. It's really, really good. And yes, final one is apparently some company trip saying that the first year employees, they don't know any manners these days. They took the senior members' toilet when everyone went into the toilet at the same time. I've heard of the elevator where to sit, the taxi where to sit, the all this sort of stuff. I've never heard of the toilet, which toilet is the boss toilet. I think that's ridiculous, but that was there. Anyway, that's the end of the show. It's gone long, hasn't it? Damn, it's gone quite long tonight, so I'm sorry about that, but thank you for joining me. The Typhoon is picking up, so everybody stay safe. Lawrence Sakai, I'm sorry that you had to cancel your plans, but it was probably the right move. You would have gotten stuck. Yeah, you're in Tokyo, so it should be okay, but at the same time, anything can happen, so yes, play it safe. Everyone stay safe tonight. If you are in Japan, this typhoon's going to be rushing up through the night up to the top of Japan. That's really the show for me. Sorry for being entertaining, says Tim the Asian Egg. Good to see you, Tim the Asian Egg. Please never be sorry for being entertaining. No, not long enough, says Mulberry Pie. Well, we have jobs and I have to sleep and so on, but I'm going to do an outro with the track that I was playing around with. Let's make a new track. Give me a style of music and I'm going to do the outro. And that'll be the end of the show. So thank you everybody for joining. And you know what? Rather than trying to get the HDMI going, I think I'm just going to do it like this. So boom, let's plug that in. Give me a style of music and a beat. Aggressive wind chimes. Jazz is tough. It's got to have a beat. This is a chord, remember. Well, let's do this outro. Drum and bass. I can do drum and bass. Okay, let's save the one that I was doing and do a new one. Boom. New. Yep. Now let's make it 165. Okay, let's start with the beat. And let's make it breaks. No. Can you hear that? I'll turn that up. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good night. Old school. Let's add some different ones there. get some smooth bass. Let's do low boost bass. Let's make this an E, make it a new Q. Okay. That's also good. Let's try one more time. Okay, it's kind of fun. The last one's a bit off. Fix that bass. Ah. Try it. I'll do it. If I do this, I'll have to re-plug in this. There we go. the show. Good to see you all. Have a good week, everyone. See you later. Boom. Peace. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you, Shiakazi. I'm sorry that you did that, but thank you very much and have a good week. Boom. Gotta stop the show now. Boom. End stream. Remember to like if you liked. Down there. Peace.